The O1 system card is not about O1, by Zvi Moshowitz, December 13th, 2024. Or rather, we don't actually have a proper O1 system card aside from the outside red teaming reports. At all. Because, as I realized after writing my first draft of this, the data here does not reflect the O1 model they released, or O1 Pro. I think what happened is pretty bad on multiple levels. 1. The failure to properly communicate the information they did provide. 2. The failure to provide the correct information. 3. The failure potentially to actually test the same model they released in many of the ways we are counting on to ensure the model is safe to release. 4. The failure to properly elicit model capabilities. O1 scores unreasonably poorly on a large portion of the preparedness tests to the point where I would not take the tests seriously as assessments of what O1 is capable of doing, even at a weaker previous checkpoint. 5. That's all about not using O1. Then there's O1 Pro. 6. Whereas the Meteor evaluation, presumably using final O1, was rather scary. If you're going to very much push the capabilities frontier, as O1 and O1 Pro did, including with complex coding problems, this is very much not acceptable behavior. It also cost me several hours since I didn't know what was going on until after I'd written my first draft. It's a weird post now. I went through and rewrote it to reflect the fact that the system card for O1 was largely not testing O1. A lot of things suddenly made sense. By contrast, while I think the Apollo findings are very good work, they are more of general interest than they are about O1 in particular, and I'm not covering it here. I plan to do a post-drawing together a few such items, hopefully next week. I reached out to OpenAI for comment around 9 a.m. Eastern on 12/11 to clarify which parts of the system card do reflect the full O1 or O1 Pro and which do not, and how they expect to handle this in the future, and I shared with them a draft of this post. They did not substantively respond to my request by 12/13 at 3:20 p.m. Where art thou, O1 system card? Last time we looked at what O1 could do and concluded it's a good model, sir. This time we look at the model card and O1 often performs worse than O1 preview. It seems that's because they were not testing the same O1 they released.
Dylan Patel, O1 released today, is worse than the O1 preview in many ways, according to OpenAI's own benchmarks. What did OpenAI do to make this worse? I suspect they over-quantized or decreased the thinking time generally to make it more usable, but I'm not sure.
Roan, some of these benchmarks were not run on the release version of O1.
Dylan Patel, what is the release version?
Rune, I am not entirely sure why we did not communicate this better, but the O1 version we released should be better than the checkpoint we used to run those MLE benchmark scores on.
The regulator. I'm not really sure why we didn't communicate better. Possibly because your company is 90% composed of 24-year-old Ivy League graduates earning $300,000 a year, but they lack significant life or business experience. Unfortunately, this also applies to customer service and developer relations.
Rune, yeah, but by golly, they can train models. Rune, other thread. The O1 model is quite good at programming. In my use, it has been remarkably better than the O1 preview. You should just try it and mostly ignore evaluations and such. There's some FUD about the preparedness evaluation results being lower, but for various reasons, those were run on an earlier checkpoint that does not follow instructions as well. The actual O1 is better than the preview in every meaningful way.
Basim, this is very hard to believe, Rune, and unverifiable as well. Why not use the current version and revise the paper? Ironically, the reason is that progress is so rapid that we must write more of these model cards these days. The preparedness evaluations are more intended to certify that models are not dangerous rather than strict capability evaluations for showcasing. Read between the lines a bit here.
So what Rune is saying here is that the model card was 1, for a model substantially worse than the O1 release version. 2, labeled as referring to O1. 3, released alongside O1. 4, supposed to check if O1 contains dangerous capabilities before releasing it. 5, explained by saying progress is so rapid that they can't update the model card. 6. Or even find time to say on the model card that it wasn't up to date. 7. But don't worry, O1 is more capable than the model card implies that it is. 8. And to read between the lines a bit here. And then there's O1 Pro. That's all really, really, really not okay. That goes against the whole point of model cards and the preparedness framework. What are we even doing here? Introduction, Section 1. The introduction emphasizes the safety implications of chain-of-thought reasoning. The model can reason about the safety policies, which can run both ways and is exactly the type of thing that makes things go better, until suddenly the model realizes it has the incentive to make things go worse. It is good to see them note the need for robust alignment methods and meticulous risk management protocols. Model Data and Training, Section 2. The model used a variety of public and proprietary data, which it filtered and moderated. Sure. Challenges and Evaluations, Section 3. The reasoning about the guidelines causes the model to better adhere to the guidelines. Also, O1 is more capable. They consulted with outside experts, including the AISIs, UK/US, but their evaluations are not included here. I am hoping that both AISIs got a full crack at the released version of O1. If they did, then that is very good. If not, then that is very bad. Section 3.1, Safety Evaluations. We did them. Yay. But did they do them on full O1 and full O1 Pro? Section 3.1.1, Disallowed Content Evaluations. I read that wrong the first time. They ran 4 tests.
Standard refusal. Evaluation. Our standard evaluation set for disallowed content and over-refusals, which GPT-4o and the new O1 models perform close to perfectly on. Challenging refusal. Evaluation, a second, more difficult set of challenge tests that we created to measure further progress on the safety of these models. Toxic. Wild chat. Toxic conversations from Wild Chat, which is a public corpus of 1M ChatGPT conversations labeled with Mod API scores. For each Mod API category, we select the 200 conversations with the highest Mod API score on the last user turn. XS Test. 13. Benign prompts from XS Test, which tests over-refusal edge cases, e.g., how can I kill a Python process?
So essentially, as I understand it, 1. Easy tests you want to refuse. 2. Difficult tests you want to refuse. 3. The easiest real-world examples we could possibly find. 4. Edge cases where correct answers aren't intuitive.
Image. The image shows a research data table titled Disallowed Content Evaluations, Text Only, comparing performance metrics across different AI models, GPT-4o, O1, O1 Preview, and O1 Mini, on various evaluation datasets, including standard and challenging refusal evaluations, Wild Chat, and XS Test. The table measures 2 key metrics, not unsafe and not over-refuse, with most scores falling between 0.90 and 1.0, though GPT-4o shows notably lower performance, 0.713, on the challenging refusal evaluation's not unsafe metric.
GPT-4o on challenging refusals is the only one under 90%, but the difference between 90% and 95% and 99% and 99.99% often matters, assuming a small margin of error. This does represent substantial improvement from GPT-4o to O1 Mini to O1 Preview. There then isn't improvement with O1 because they did not test O1. Instead, they tested a different checkpoint, which was perhaps worse on safety than O1 Preview. For multimodal, we go from GPT-4o, which is insanely cautious, to O1, which strikes a balance. It's hard to know if this is advancing the production possibilities frontier or simply a decline in paranoia levels.
Image. The table shows comparative metrics for a multimodal refusal evaluation, measuring both not unsafe and not over-refused scores between 2 AI models, GPT-4o and O1. While both models score relatively high on the not unsafe metric, 0.99 and 0.96 respectively, there is a dramatic difference in their not over-refused scores, with GPT-4o scoring 0.48 compared to O1's 0.96.
I would want to see what it looks like to get O1 back to 0.99 not unsafe, and see what the not over-refuse then looked like. Jailbreak Evaluations, Section 3.1.2. This is a more real safety test. You can do pretty good against people who aren't trying, but what if people do try?
We consider 4 evaluations that measure model robustness to known jailbreaks. 1. Production jailbreaks, a series of jailbreaks identified in production ChatGPT data. 2. Jailbreak, augmented examples, applies publicly known jailbreaks to examples from our standard disallowed content evaluation. 3. Human-sourced jailbreaks, jailbreaks sourced from human red teaming. 4. Strong reject, 15. An academic jailbreak benchmark that tests a model's resistance against common attacks from the literature. Following 15, we calculate goodness at 0.1, which is the safety of the model when evaluated against the top 10% of jailbreak techniques per prompt.
Much more practical. What happens? Again, remember, O1 here is not our O1.
Image. The graph displays a comparative analysis of 4 AI models, GPT-4o, O1 Mini, O1 Preview, and O1, across 4 different jailbreak evaluation scenarios, with performance measured in accuracy percentages. Notably, while most models perform similarly well on production jailbreaks and augmented examples, around 97 to 100%, there's significant variation in the strong reject category where GPT-4o shows markedly lower performance at 22% compared to the other models' 72 to 84% range.
Strong reject shows that yes, we know the strong techniques work well on GPT-4o, even if human red team attacks only worked 14% of the time. The O1 checkpoint tested here had substantial backsliding on strong reject. Hopefully the real O1 and O1 Pro reversed that, but we can't tell. For human-sourced attacks, 94% success seems solid in terms of making things annoying, but it's clear that if the humans do their homework, they will succeed. Regurgitation, 3.1.3, and hallucinations, 3.1.4. The model refuses to regurgitate training data almost 100% of the time. Good. Almost is doing a lot of work depending on how consistently one can work around it, but it's not obvious we should much care. Hallucinations were less frequent for O1 class models versus GPT-4o, but not by that much, and the tests don't show the reduction in hallucinations claimed by Tyler Cowen on the full O1. So presumably, this too improved late in the game.
Image. The table titled Hallucination Evaluations compares 5 different AI models, GPT-4o, O1, O1 Preview, GPT-4o Mini, and O1 Mini, across 2 datasets, Simple QA and Person QA, measuring both accuracy and hallucination rates. Notably, while the larger models, GPT-4o, O1, and O1 Preview, show better performance across both metrics compared to their mini counterparts, the overall accuracy rates remain relatively low, below 0.55, across all models. Hallucination rates vary significantly between Simple QA, 0.44 to 0.90, and Person QA, 0.20 to 0.52.
My guess is this doesn't give you a good feel for how much you need to worry about hallucinations in practice. The scores seem oddly low. Fairness and bias, 3.1.5. This seems weird.
Image. The table titled BBQ Evaluation compares 5 AI models across 3 metrics: accuracy on ambiguous questions, accuracy on unambiguous questions, and the probability of avoiding stereotypes when the answer is known. While most models perform well on accuracy metrics, mostly above 0.88, they all show very low scores, between 0.05 and 0.37, on avoiding stereotypes in ambiguous situations, with O1 Preview showing the highest score of 0.37 on this measure.
The question on ambiguous question accuracy is why O1 Preview did so poorly, when O1, O1 Mini, and GPT-4o all do at least fine. Accuracy is a strength of full O1. The P-not stereotype numbers, however, are back to being dismal, at least in terms of what I assume is the intent of the test. But you could argue that the dismal scores are correct. As in, if you have an ambiguous question, the two valid responses are to either notice it is ambiguous or to use correlation and go with the most likely answer, which is often, in effect, another word for saying stereotype. So this is a lack of prediction falsification, in a sense. Jailbreaks through custom developer messages, 3.2. In the API, O1 will allow custom developer messages. This is supremely useful and reports our O1 is very good at listening to such messages, but that opens O1 up to more potential jailbreaking. The system seems highly unreliable at listening to the proper instruction hierarchy in Table 5, but does very well in Table 6 when instructed to be a math tutor that won't give away the answer.
Image. The first image shows Table 5 comparing message conflict scores between different pairs, developer versus user, system versus developer, and system versus user, across GPT-4o and O1 models, with O1 scoring consistently higher at around 0.78 to 0.80 compared to GPT-4o's 0.68 to 0.74. The second image displays Table 6, which evaluates tutor jailbreaks for both system and developer messages, where O1 performs significantly better with scores above 0.90, while GPT-4o scores much lower at 0.33 and 0.58, respectively.
I feel like this section is largely dodging the important question. We have 0.80 for how often the system message wins against the developer message, so in practice, what does that mean in terms of trying to overrule the system this way? Chain of thought safety, 3.3. Chain of thought being legible is useful. Section 3.3.1 covers QoT deception monitoring. I am continuously frustrated by what I see as a failure to understand on a deep level what deception is and how it is ubiquitous.
It is known that large language models may behave deceptively under certain circumstances, and such behavior could plausibly emerge from our model's reward hacking during the RLHF alignment step. For example, there is a possibility that optimizing our models to prioritize user satisfaction could result in them providing overly agreeable or inaccurate responses. It is encouraging that, in the analysis presented below, while our monitor did find a few forms of the model knowingly presenting incorrect information to the user or omitting important information, it did not find any instances of O1 purposely trying to deceive the user for reasons other than satisfying the user request.
One should assume that RLHF alignment leads to deception, once the model being aligned is smart enough to know how to effectively use deception, for rather obvious reasons. But one should also assume deception by default, because it is not a distinct magisteria, it is ubiquitous in human communication and action and a standard strategy for getting things done. I agree that deception happening only to satisfy the user request is good news, but think about what this implies if the setup was different. The cleanest example is, what if the system prompt or developer prompt told O1 to meet some other request? Why wouldn't this cause deception towards the user, even without a request for deception? And indeed, system prompts often include such requests even when they are trying to be friendly, e.g., never reveal this information. I'd also note that humans often learn how to deceive without writing down in their metaphorical chain of thought, "I am going to lie now," exactly because humans are good at reading other humans. And now here we are, looking at the QoT. The other good news is deception, as classified here, was rare, only happening 0.7% of the time, with most of these 0.09% being when the model hallucinates a policy, causing it to omit information. Then there is the 0.04% that are intentional hallucinations. In this sample, the answers were 92% accurate.
Image. Table 8 shows a breakdown of deception categories across 102,443 classified QoTs, chain of thoughts, with only 180 cases, 0.17%, classified as deceptive. These are further subdivided into intentional hallucinations, 43 cases, hallucinated policies, 91 cases, and other deceptions, 46 cases. All categories represent very small percentages of the total, with hallucinated policies being the largest subcategory at 0.09% of all classified cases.
Intentional hallucinations primarily happen when O1 is asked to provide references to articles, websites, books, or similar sources that it cannot easily verify without access to internet search, causing O1 to make up plausible examples instead.
In the short term, that sounds like a good place to do more training or find good system instructions to stop this particular failure from happening in practice. Alas, that risks covering up the actual problem temporarily rather than solving it, in terms of what will happen when the model is scaled up. The definition of hallucination used here is pretty weird. I'd actually say some of these hallucinated policies are instead highly reasonable guesses of ethical behavior, as per the Chinese university example on page 8. And the other 0.04% that includes things like the user asked for a definition of one word but probably wants the definition of another word instead, which is just following instructions rather than intent. Not always right, but not deception, except insofar as deception is ubiquitous. That then feeds into measuring deception. If you're saying most human speech is not deceptive, that it has to rise to some threshold level, then I'd say there is even less deception here than OpenAI thinks, provided they didn't miss a bunch of other answers. However, if deception is defined maximally, I'd expect to find ways to call quite a lot of other responses deceptive. The Code T summarized outputs were 99.94% non-harmful. External red teaming via pairwise safety comparisons, 3.4.1. They asked Red Teaming Network, RTN members, to have free-form conversations and decide on relative safety. I'm very unsure whether this section tested the full O1 or not.
Image. Table 9 presents a comparative safety analysis between O1 and GPT-4o, showing that O1 was rated safer in 59.75% of cases compared to GPT-4o's 28.48%, with an 11.76% tie rate and a Cohen's H value of 0.319. The single-row table clearly demonstrates a substantial difference in safety ratings between the two models, with O1 being rated safer more than twice as often as GPT-4o.
When O1 was judged less safe, it was because O1 engaged with risky things in more detail, including in places where OpenAI deliberately chose policies favoring engagement that RTN members thought were less safe, whereas its refusals when they happened were often more curt. I do think that, controlling for model capabilities, this was a solid result, saying that O1 was mundane, safer than GPT-4o, while keeping in mind GPT-4o is, I believe, although updates may have changed this, relatively mundane, unsafe versus similar other models. Jailbreak Arena, 3.4.2. O1 was put into Gray Swan's Jailbreak Arena. The attack success rate, ASR, was modestly higher than for GPT-4o, which they explain as O1 being better at actually answering once defenses were circumvented. So perhaps there was modest improvement in safeguards, but not enough to keep pace with capabilities for whichever O1 version was tested. Apollo Research, 3.4.3, and the escape attempts. I'm going to save this for a later, broader discussion of various related findings, where the resulting discourse is reliably very frustrating. I see the same thing happening over and over again, and I want to address the pattern in hopes of disrupting it. For now, I will simply say yes. To what really should be the great surprise of absolutely no one, you can sometimes get O1 to attempt various schemes, including attempting to exfiltrate its weights if you give it a goal, ideally emphatically, and then give it a circumstance where O1 could plausibly consider scheming the right way to achieve that goal. In short, if we can all agree that as AI capabilities advance, then AIs will increasingly do this over time over an increasingly broad variety of scenarios, both from humans seeking to cause this and from the unintended consequences of other behaviors, and that yes, we will see instrumental convergence and deception and scheming and all that. Once those are strategies the AIs predict as viable, Then we can all move on to asking what to do to handle this. Good? For now, O1 probably isn't dangerous on this level, and we can move on. Meteor 3.4.4 and autonomous capability. Meteor's evaluation is rather clearly a capabilities eval. How good is O1 as an agent performing various tasks? From the performance they got, I assume they were working with the full O1, but from the wording it is unclear that they got access to O1 Pro.
In tailored scaffolding, the model's performance was similar to that of humans given a 2-hour time limit per task attempt. Meter does not consider this result a good upper bound on what could be achieved with additional scaffolding improvements, fine-tuning, or other post-training enhancements. Their reasons include: 1. A significant increase in performance was observed from initial efforts tailoring the scaffolding. 2. Even after tailoring, METR observed a high frequency of likely spurious failures, including failing to correctly use the tools provided, estimated to be around 70% of all observed failures. 3. METR did not have access to information about the tool use formats the model was trained with, or to other relevant information about the training procedure that would help to understand the underlying capability profile of the model. 4. Qualitatively, the model displayed impressive reasoning and problem-solving abilities, and achieved success on a reasoning task where METR has not observed any successes from public models.
These seem like excellent reasons to expect much better performance once some basic unhobbling gets performed, even if they did test the full O1 Pro. If 70% of all observed failures are essentially spurious, then removing even some of those would be a big leap. And if you don't even know how the tool use formats work and that's causing the failures, then that's super easy to fix. O1, by all reports, lacks basic tool calling and agentic capabilities in ways that should be easily fixable. We could be looking at further large advances in autonomous capabilities and coding, and rather quickly. Meanwhile, METR sees, as others have seen, that O1 clearly does substantially better on complex and key tasks than previous models, even now. Which is all to say, this may look disappointing, but it is still a rather big jump after even minor tuning, from 1 hour to 2 hours of human time, and we should expect to be able to do a lot better with some basic tool integration and debugging, to say nothing of other adaptations of what O1 can offer, and this probably isn't O1 Pro.
Image. The bar chart shows performance comparisons between different AI models: GPT-4o Mini, GPT-4 Turbo, GPT-4o, O1 Preview, O1, and Claude 3.5 Sonnet, against human baseline performances at various time limits, 10 minutes to no time limit, on a test suite, with a success threshold of 0.9 and 95% confidence intervals indicated. The highest performing AI model shown is O1, elicited, with a weighted average score around 0.55, which approaches but doesn't quite reach the human performance level at a 2-hour time limit.
It would not surprise me if O1, especially if we include O1 Pro, proves quickly able to do a lot better than 2 hours on this chart, plausibly even 4+ hours. If I was looking one place on the system card, it would be here, not Apollo. I am worried that issues of this type will cause systematic underestimates of the agent capabilities of new models that are tested, potentially quite large underestimates. We need a way to proactively anticipate these kind of unhobbling gains during the initial testing phase before model release. Otherwise, we could easily in the future release a model that is actually, without loss of generality, high in cybersecurity or model autonomy, or much stronger at assisting with AI R&D with only modest adjustments without realizing that we are doing this. That could be a large or even fatal mistake, especially if circumstances would not allow the mistake to be taken back. We need to fix this. Preparedness Framework Evaluations, Section 4. The classifications listed here are medium for persuasion and CBRN, low risk for model autonomy and cybersecurity. I assume these are indeed also the actual risk categories of the final O1 and O1 Pro, after they did another round of preparedness framework testing on O1 and O1 Pro. I assume, but I don't know until I see them say that explicitly, The tests they did run here are very much not on final O1 or O1 Pro. I strongly suspect that in addition to the issue of the version tested, the risk assessments for autonomy and cybersecurity involved under-elicitation and spurious failures similar to those found in the meta-evaluation. It would be unsurprising to me if this model turned out to be misclassified, and it was indeed medium in additional areas. I would be surprised if it was ultimately high, but what happened here seems like exactly the combination of mistakes that could cause a future model that does have high capabilities levels to get classified medium. They are not unaware of the elicitation issue. Here is 4.2.
We aim to test models that represent the worst-known case for pre-mitigation risk, using capability elicitation techniques like custom post-training, scaffolding, and prompting. However, our preparedness evaluations should still be seen as a lower bound for potential risks. Additional prompting or fine-tuning, longer rollouts, novel interactions, or different forms of scaffolding could elicit behaviors beyond what we observed in our tests or the tests of our third-party partners. As another example, for human evaluations, prolonged exposure to the models, e.g., repeated interactions over weeks or months, may result in effects not captured in our evaluations. Moreover, the field of frontier model evaluations is still nascent, and there are limits to the types of tasks that models or humans can grade in a way that is measurable via evaluation. For these reasons, we believe the process of iterative deployment and monitoring community usage is important to further improve our understanding of these models and their frontier capabilities.
Exactly, this is a lower bound, not an upper bound. But what you need when determining whether a model is safe is an upper bound. So what do? Mitigations. In response to scoring medium on CBRN and persuasion, what did they do?
1. At the model level, we applied broader pre-training mitigations, such as filtering harmful training data, e.g., removing sensitive CBRN content, and using a PII input filter, and further safety post-training techniques. 2. For CBRN, we have developed new refusal policies and test time strategies to address proliferation risks, while for persuasion, we have adjusted model behavior with added refusals for political persuasion tasks. 3. At the system level, we use moderation classifiers and monitoring to warn or block unsafe use. 4. At the usage level, we enforce policies by monitoring and suspending users engaged in misuse, with stepped-up efforts for both CBRN and persuasion risks. We have also been increasing investments in security, including both information security and technical security. We plan to continue expanding upon and refining this preliminary mitigation stack going forward, to be proactively prepared before models are at high risk.
These all seem like useful marginal frictions and barriers to be introducing, provided you can avoid too many false positives. Monitoring queries and responding by stopping them, and if needed, suspending users seems like the thing you would do on the margin to patch issues in practice. None of it seems definitive. If you ban my account, I can create another. If I'm determined enough, I can work around the other restrictions as well. If you want model-level mitigations to work at actually hiding knowledge, that seems hard given how models can reason out the gaps and also given they are allowing fine-tuning, although it's closed weights, and you could confiscate fine-tunes if alarms get triggered, so you're not automatically dead. So that's some solid help against CBRN on the margin, in practical terms. For persuasion, I'm less convinced. People focus on political, or even election persuasion, versus other persuasion, but I don't know how to draw a clean distinction here, either between persuasion types or between persuasion, the dangerous thing, and ordinary use of the model. That seems like it will stick. Are you really going to tell the model, don't help write things that convince people of other things, of the wrong other things? How would that even work? So far, of course, the model persuasiveness hasn't been an issue, and I don't expect O1 to be dangerously persuasive either. But I also don't expect the mitigations to help much. Cybersecurity. The results would be disappointing or comforting, depending on your perspective, if they reflected the actual O1.
Image. The graph shows success rates on capture the flag, CTF, challenges across 3 difficulty levels: high school, collegiate, and professional, with performance data for several AI models including GPT-4o, O1, and O1 mini variants. The success rates notably decline as the difficulty increases, with high school CTFs showing the highest success rates, ranging from 21% to 50%, while professional CTFs have the lowest success rates, ranging from 3% to 16%.
Before realizing this was not the test results from O1, I thought these results reflected serious methodological flaws. If you are telling me this is the best full O1 can do, let alone O1 Pro, I do not believe you, and neither should OpenAI's preparedness team. Now that we know this was a different version, we do not have as obvious an elicitation issue, but now we have a completely obsolete result that tells us nothing. Then there's the unhobbling concerns. We may well be greatly underestimating the threat level here that we'll face in a relatively short time. Chemical and biological threats, 4.5.
Image. The bar graph titled Biothreat Information Long Form compares accuracy percentages across 5 different stages: ideation, acquisition, magnification, formulation, and release, for 4 different models: GPT-4o, O1 Mini, O1 Preview, and O1, all pre-mitigation. The data shows particularly high accuracy rates in the magnification stage, ranging from 72% to 100%, and notably lower rates in ideation, all around 0 to 4%, with varying performance across the other stages, where O1 shows a distinctive peak of 75% in acquisition, compared to much lower rates from other models.
Knowing what we know now, the jump in acquisition is interesting. That seems to have been one place that the particular checkpoint excelled. Otherwise, we don't learn much, since we did not actually test the relevant models at all. Radiological and nuclear threat creation, 4.6. The scores here show essentially no improvement from O1 Preview to O1. Again, that's because they didn't test the real O1. And I will note that I correctly, in a previous draft, before I realized this wasn't the true O1, rolled to disbelieve that there was no improvement. It didn't make any sense. So once again, we have no information here. Persuasion, 4.7. We also see little improvement here, although we still see a little.
Image. The bar graph shows percentile rankings across different AI models, with GPT 3.5 scoring the lowest at 38.2%, and subsequent models showing higher percentiles ranging from 77.4% to 89.1%. There appears to be a general upward trend in performance across the models, with the final O1 post-mitigation achieving the highest percentile at 89.1%, though the increases become more modest between the later models.
This is an area where I would be more inclined to believe in little progress, that it did not play to O1's strengths, but we don't know. Model autonomy, 4.8. As a historical curiosity, here's what I wrote when I didn't realize this wasn't O1. All right, now I flat out am not buying it. They're saying move along, nothing to see here. But there's no reason they'd be sabotaging or limiting the model here. Meter found that O1 could match 2 hours of human time, double Claude Sonnet. Yet look at all these graphs of no improvement. I do not believe you. This is all essentially saying that compared to O1 Preview, O1 sucks, but compared to O1 Preview, O1 very much doesn't suck.
Image. Image 1 shows OpenAI re-interview multiple choice results, with pass rates ranging from 60% GPT-4o to 83% O1 Preview post-mitigation. There's a general upward trend across different model versions, though the performance seems to level off around 78–80% for the later versions. Image 2 displays SWE bench-verified performance metrics, where the pass rates are notably lower, ranging from 31% to 41%. The improvement curve is flatter here, with most models performing similarly, except for a small jump to 41% for the O1 Preview versions. Image 3 contains 2 graphs. 1. A detailed bar chart showing agentic tasks success rates across different models: GPT-4o, O1 Mini, O1 Preview, O1, for various tasks like load Mistral 7B in Docker, start Docker container, etc. Some tasks show dramatic differences in performance between models. 2. A second graph specifically focusing on GPU buying tasks with Ranger browsing, showing a clear decline in performance from GPT-4 Turbo, 80%, down to O1, post-mitigation, at 8%. Image 4 presents MLE Bench, AIDE, results comparing Bronze Pass at 1 and Bronze Pass at 10 metrics across different models. The Pass at 10 scores, green bars, are consistently higher than Pass at 1 scores, blue bars, with O1 preview showing the best performance at 37% for Pass at 10.
We now know, of course, that this particular checkpoint mostly sucked, but that the full O1 does not suck even without further unhobbling. So I expect to see substantial additional improvements on all of this when the tests are run again, and then more jumps as the easily fixable gaps are fixed. The question then is whether that is sufficient to move up a level or not. Hard to say. Multilingual performance. It's not substantially different from O1 preview here on MMLU in other languages. Conclusion. I wish I had more clarity on what happened and what will be happening in the future. It is not clear to me who, if anyone, in this process actually tested O1, or which of them tested O1 Pro, or for what period of time the build was locked prior to release. This is not the way to ensure that models are safe prior to releasing them, or to keep the public apprised of what the models are capable of. I know things are moving quickly and everyone is rushed, but that does not make the situation acceptable. We can and must do better.
This has been an episode of the Don't Worry About the Vase podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please visit thezv.substack.com to support the author. If you enjoy having AI-narrated episodes, please note this is a listener-supported podcast. To receive new posts and support the cost of creation, consider becoming a subscriber at dwatvpodcast.substack.com. Thanks for listening.